Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense.
Welcome back to the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I am here with our other host, Joe LaVacca. You can find us on Instagram at Joe Gambino DPT for myself, at strengthenmotion_PT for LaVacca over there. Podcast on Instagram, Beyond Pain Podcast, and on YouTube, Cups of Joe_PT. Welcome back.
Good to be back. I'm excited to chat with you again. I am obviously a big fan of the topic that we're going to be speaking of. So it comes up constantly, and I'm sure we've touched on it a little bit, but it'll be nice to give it its own space, Mr. Gambino. So good job picking the topic today. And the topic is pain in your head. And I think this is definitely, especially with the clients that we have found ourselves, more and more connected to, probably people who have gone to other clinicians, have been struggling with persistent or problematic pain for some time. And then sooner or later, you're going to meet a healthcare provider who probably just gets frustrated. And we've all been there, and I've been there, and I'm sure I'll be there again. I do my best to limit my frustration, but it still happens. And I think when I hear stories from clients and they've been told this idea that pain is all in their head, it usually comes up after, hey, well, nothing was working, the injections didn't help, the surgery didn't do this, my exercises weren't going good. And then I have a healthcare provider blurt out, well, this is all in your head, and we have to kind of, either get past it or ignore it, keep moving forward in some way, shape, or form. So when you've had that happen, what are your first thoughts? How do you try to handle it?
Yeah, it's I think a frustrating process because I think people in healthcare, doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, you name it. I don't know if providers don't understand the impact our words have, but the things that we say, especially when someone's coming to us in a place of vulnerability, they have a lot of pain, they're not sure what to do. There's a lot of uncertainty for them. That saying something like, there's nothing wrong with you. The imaging is clear. There's, we can't reproduce your pain in the clinic, whatever it is. And, movement looks okay. Like it means the pain is in your head, right? And when you start to tell somebody that there's nothing wrong with you when they come in and they're telling you that they've had pain for all this time, well, now you're not listening to that person. The patient's going to feel misunderstood. You're going to feel misheard. It's going to create more confusion. And then you're telling them that it's in their head. And now they're like, well, some people might think it. I've had people come to me and they're like, oh, well, I don't know if the pain's all in my head. I'm like, well, the nervous system can kind of like determine that's your alarm system. It can ring off a bell, and that can be for a number of different reasons. And it may not be anything specific to what you've done or an actual diagnosis or something that pops up on imaging, right? You can have a escalated alarm system or more sensitive alarm system. And then when people are telling them this, and it can just make that alarm system even more sensitive, right? So frustrating to hear. I think that is from that person or that provider standpoint, I think they're doing a disservice to somebody by not addressing or listening, right? Like, I think it goes a long way with us just listening to that person to educate that person and, kind of almost be on their team versus like, you just put a divide here, right? Like, I think once you say something like that, there's a 0% chance that you're going to be able to help them from there.
Yeah, it definitely gets a lot harder when you break that trust, for sure. I think it's, the way that we've talked about pain, or the way that I've sort of expressed it is, the way that it makes the most sense to me is to sort of consider it an emotion, right? Or just a perception. So yes, it absolutely is in your head. And let's just talk about the podcast for a second. And whoever's listening to the podcast right now, where is my voice? Is my voice coming from the speaker? Is my voice in your ear? Is my voice in your head? And the answer is yes. It's coming out of the speaker into your ear, and your brain is processing it. So yes, my voice right now is existing in 3 different places, or maybe 4 or 5, 6 different places, all at once. So while pain is in your head, it is also in your body. It is a part of the tissues that are telling you they hurt. So if your elbow hurts or your back hurts, but your x-ray's clean, your MRI's clean, the thing I tell people is, well, just because we can't see a pathway doesn't mean that one isn't there. We just might not have the ability to detect it with an x-ray or an MRI. And this is typically where I would tell them a little bit about feeling sick. Right? You can go get an X-ray or an MRI when you have a cold, and even though your head hurts or your chest is maybe congested, your X-ray and your MRI are going to be completely clear. Right? We can't see your sickness, but we know that you are actually sick. So how do we handle it? Well, just like what you said, right? Well, we listen to you, we give you some advice, we help you with maybe some lifestyle modifications, things that are going to make you feel better, right? Maybe it's eating soup, maybe it's going to bed early, maybe it's taking a day off from work. So we do the same things as physical therapists when we're listening to these people in pain. Hey, I'm understanding you. Here's what we can do as far as movement or exercise goes. Here's what we can do to maybe help you with your sleep hygiene. And here's just some things that maybe make you feel better. Maybe it's the foam roller, maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the ice, maybe it's the Advil, the Tylenol, whatever the case is. But just because we can't see something, I don't think we should be not believing or not listening to our clients, and instead trying to work with ways that will help them make sense of things rather than just throw out the sort of ending result of it's in your head, get over it. Because that's typically the connotation, is that, hey, I can't help you unless you do something, which is probably true for the most part, but they are coming to us to be that something, to be that guide, right? And I think that that's sort of the way I've tried to explain it more recently when people feel kind of a little bit stuck. And that's sort of, what helped me, I guess, repair some of these relationships again.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I think it's a really great way to kind of break that down. And I think I kind of always, from like a education point, and I don't have the ability to, maybe I do have the ability to draw here. I just don't know how. But, the envelope of function, just kind of having like that graph of, like pain and time and essence, right? Where, you could have like a large level of force, so to speak, right? And, that breaks your arm, right? You fell, I don't know, off a ladder and landed on your arm and you broke it, right? That's like a large level of force that kind of goes in there. And then, you can also have these like, longer duration forces, like sitting for a long period of time that kind of build up. We all have this kind of like neurological safe zone, right? If we walk, we're going to be generally okay, right? That's not really high level. If we have a certain amount of force that acts on our body, if we do that way too often, right, that can push off our nervous system, right? So I start to kind of give this educational standpoint. And the more you spend time in this zone where, we're above this kind of like, there's a gap right between our neurological level of what our body feels safe and what the anatomical breaking point where I'm going to break my wrist is. And if we spend a bunch of time in that area there, right, then pain can start to happen. And when pain starts to happen, that initial threshold starts to come down. So now forces that our body feels safe with are less and less and less over time if we don't kind of address these things. So I think that also kind of helps people understand like, oh, there's an actual explanation for why my pain is so sensitive a little bit and things like that. And now we say, well, what we do now is same way we were strength train somebody in a case of things were normal, we want to train you as close to that neurological safe zone, right? We want to, like, if we're as close to that as possible without going over, we're going to avoid overtraining. We're going to be able to create that strength stimulus. We're going to be able to take that level of whatever it was and move it higher, right? And that builds robustness and helps you feel like you're, more resilient. And now when we're injured, all we're doing is we're taking whatever that current threshold is. Oh, you can walk, but when you start to run for 30, a half a mile, your pain starts to come on. Well, now we can train you at 20 minutes, which gets us close to that barrier. We can give you a running stimulus. And over time, that's going to help your body feel more comfortable there, and that threshold should come up. So now maybe you can run for 40, 3/4 of a mile or a mile without pain. And now we can bump you up and say, let's run at 3/4 of a mile and then a mile, right? Until we can get you back to that running distance that you want. So I think that also kind of gives them a kind of a more of a, like a concrete, this or not really concrete, but like a more concrete example. This is kind of what's happened. This is what their approach looks like. And I think that starts to help people kind of process this better, because otherwise, when we just say, oh, it's a nervous system response, it's, there's still a lot of uncertainty. And I think that giving somebody as much certainty as possible around it can really help them find that path forward, so to speak.
Yeah. And what you were just highlighting, it sounded to me is like compassion, right? We just said that being told pain is all in your head is, kind of disempowering to some degree, kind of maybe makes you lose, a path forward, or what do I do if it's all in my head? I mean, I'm not creating the pain. I don't want it to be there. I'm not trying to make myself miserable. And then you just lay out this wonderful idea of, hey, well, this is what we can do, right? And then that's compassion. That's going to restore hope. I think coming back to that idea, though, of, and I think you said it before, the words that we speak have impact. And I think we so often highlight placebo in the medical field. And that's basically using an inactive substance or an inactive treatment to cure or alleviate people's symptoms, right? And that's what a placebo does. It doesn't cure disease, but it does really help with symptoms. So if a nocebo, or a now actively harmful sort of like idea, ingredient, or word is going to be thrown into the mix, well, okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily make the pain worse, but it will make suffering and potentially all those other factors that we've talked about coming along with it a lot more difficult to manage. Because now I have this 6, 7, 8, whatever number out of 10 pain. Oh, and it's all in my head. So there's nothing that Joe Gambino, Joe LaVacca, or any doctor can do to help me, because this is my fault, right? And when you take that blame on yourself, it makes it a lot harder to take action. So I think that's why we work so hard, and, we do the podcast and we try to give out as much good information as possible to people, because we've seen it, and we've seen it really harm people's outcomes and prevent them from being where they want to be. So if you've been told pain is in your head, rejoice, because that is true. It is also in your body. It is also in your mind. Because when we say head, I mean, are we saying the brain? Because that's a very specific structure. Are we saying the mind, because that's a construct, or just the whole head? Right. I mean, like now even more semantics have to come up into well, what do we actually mean by head? Right. Because I also can't touch the mind, because the mind is an idea. Right. So your mind is your body is your mind, your brain is your nervous system is your brain. There is no separating all of these things. And I think the more people can learn that, then I think it becomes, how many options do we have to work with you? And then you could tell me which options haven't worked. And then you just using that running example, oh, you can't run for 30 minutes? Okay, that's no problem. Has anyone ever told you to run 6 minutes 5 times? Has anyone ever told you to just do intervals up to 20? Has anyone ever told you to split your workout into 2 workouts? Right? I mean, and just right there, you're giving people options again. Right. So, and I think that's what you really highlighted. Really.
Yeah, I like that. And I think what you're trying to say here is, you can't think your way into pain, right? It's not like my back, I'm just thinking about my back and I'm making the pain happen, right? And you can't do the opposite, right? You can't just like, well, it's in my head, right? So I don't have pain anymore, and it goes away. It's a lot more complicated than that. And, technically it's in there somewhere, right? But it's not of any fault of your own. It's a response more than a thought, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
You got anything else for us, Joy Boy?
No, I think that was it. I know we wanted to try to, keep this one a little shorter and sweeter. And I think we both hit the points that I was hoping that we would touch on. So I hope it was helpful for everyone. Listeners,
love it.
We love you. Joe, I love you. And don't forget to come back. Ooh, double love. Don't forget to come back next week for another exciting episode of the Beyond Pain podcast.